All right, so think about this for a second. How do you build a legacy that literally shapes all of Western thought without ever writing down a single word? It's this totally bizarre but compelling story of Socrates, and we're going to dive right into how he pulled it off.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? This is the fundamental puzzle we have to piece together. I mean, the ideas of Socrates are the bedrock of so much of our world. Yet everything, and I mean everything, we know about him is secondhand. It's kind of like trying to understand a legendary musician, but you're not allowed to listen to their music. All you have are reviews from people who went to their concerts.
And that right there, that's what historians call the Socratic problem. Zero books, zero letters, nothing. So we have to see him through the eyes of his students, especially Plato, which forces us to ask a really tricky question. How much of what we think of as Socrates' ideas are actually Plato's ideas just put into his old teacher's mouth? Now, Socrates didn't see himself as some wise teacher who had all the answers. Nope, he had this amazing way of describing himself. He was a gadfly, like an annoying horsefly that won't stop buzzing around and biting. And the horse? That was the city of Athens, powerful, but lazy and complacent, especially after a really tough war. He saw it as his job to sting it back into thinking. And his main weapon, his tool for all that stinging, was what we now call the Socratic method. And look, this isn't just about asking a bunch of random questions. Oh no, it's way more surgical than that. It's a precise way of using questions to pick apart someone's beliefs until they find the truth for themselves. This technique is so powerful, it's still a cornerstone of training in law schools and medical schools today. That's some serious staying power. So how did it actually work? Well, you can kind of think of it in two parts. First up is the destructive phase, which sounds a little harsh, but stay with me. Through a relentless series of questions, he'd get someone to realize, wait a minute, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. That moment of productive confusion, the Greeks called it aporia. And only after someone reached that point, only after they admitted they didn't have all the answers, could the second part begin, the constructive phase, where they would search for the truth together. Okay, so you might be thinking, why would anyone go around doing this? Just annoying everybody? It's a fair question. And the answer gets us right to the very heart of his entire philosophy, the engine that drove his life's work. It all starts with this famous paradox. Now, when he said this, he wasn't saying he was stupid, not at all. It was about something much deeper, intellectual humility. The idea is simple, right? You can't fill a cup that's already full. Admitting I don't know isn't a sign of weakness. It's the absolute first step you have to take before any real learning can begin. And that leads directly to maybe his most famous and most challenging idea of all. For Socrates, a life lived on autopilot, just going through the motions, never stopping to really question your own beliefs, your values, your purpose, well, to him, that wasn't really a life worth living at all. Now, here is where things get really interesting and kind of controversial. He had this theory that virtue is knowledge. He argued that no one willingly does a bad thing. In his view, when people do wrong, it's not because they're malicious or evil, it's because they're ignorant. They just don't truly understand what the good is. Well, as you can probably guess, when your life's mission is to walk around town and prove that all the most powerful people are ignorant, you're not going to make a lot of friends. In fact, you're going to make some very, very dangerous enemies. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. His enemies dragged him to trial. The official charges were impiety and corrupting the youth. Now, you have to remember, Athens was in a really fragile state back then, and these accusations were no small thing. They were basically political dynamite. The trial was a total spectacle. I mean, did Socrates get up there and beg for his life? Absolutely not. He did the opposite. He essentially doubled down, telling the jury that his questioning was a vital service to the city. As you can imagine, that kind of defiance didn't go over too well with the 501 citizens on the jury, and it ultimately sealed his fate. His principles were put to the ultimate test one last time in prison. His friends had arranged a perfect escape plan for him. It was a sure thing, but he refused. Why? Because to flee would be to commit an injustice against the laws of Athens, the very laws he'd lived under his whole life. He chose to accept an unjust death rather than become unjust himself. So, in the end, Athens executed the man. But what they couldn't kill was the idea he represented. And that's his real legacy, It's not in a book somewhere, because he never wrote one. It's a way of thinking. It's the critical inquiry that became the engine for philosophy and science. It's the intellectual integrity that inspires us to stand by our principles.
And it's the model of civil disobedience that would later inspire giants like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. So ultimately, this story, even though it's 2,500 years old, isn't just a history lesson. It's a direct challenge to every single one of us, right here, right now. It leaves us with one final and really personal question to think about.